Hey guys, here we're going to explain to you grind size, what it means, what it does, and when to change it, okay? So grind size is the size of your grinds, so individual little pieces of coffee, okay? So you have a very fine, or you have very coarse, or just right, and we're going to show you examples of all three of those, okay? We're also going to discuss why to grind them and some other tips, okay? So granularity or grind size has a lot of effect on your coffee. It's a variable that you'll probably change the most out of all of the different variables when you dial in, okay? So here we have two different size baskets. We have a single dose, single shot, and we have a double shot. In this video, we're going to use the double shot. We're going to use the same amount of dose, the same amount of coffee grinds, 18 grams in all of our examples. That's the recommended dosage for this size basket. Okay, so now when you first use your machine, maybe it's your first time using a new bag of beans, or you haven't used those beans in a little while, and maybe they're not as fresh, and you haven't dialed in those beans yet. The first thing you do is you're going to need to change that. It's going to change that based on a lot of factors, basically depending on the coffee itself. So we recommend starting at the number 1 here. We've got numbers 1 through 15. We recommend starting at number 1 and then seeing how that is, of course, at the recommended dose. So the first thing is start at 1 for the double basket, 18 grams. And then if it comes out really fast, then it might be too coarse. You need to make it a little more fine. If it comes out really slow, it's taking more than 30 seconds or whatever, then you might need to make it a little more coarse. You get just the right size particles for that bean for it to come out in 20 to 30 seconds at the right dose, while still giving you a 1-to-2 ratio, a 1 being the dosage, the coffee put in, 2 being the weight and volume that comes out. We're going to make it too coarse, okay? So we're going to bring this to a larger number towards the side that says coarse. Let's try like a 6, okay? So we know that what grind size is perfect for this bean. So we're going to make it too coarse. We're going to grind out 18 grams. All right, I went a little over. I want to control this variable a lot so that I can see exactly what's happening. So I'm going to control the weight. All right, we have exactly 18 grams here. Since I just changed my grind size, I actually need to purge. Purging, basically what that means is all grinders will hold some amount of grinds inside. They call that grind retention. It's retaining some of the grinds. So between here, your hopper, and here, the output, you have your burrs, or the part that grinds, and then after that is a chute, or the amount of space that between the grinder itself and the outlet. In that chute and the grinder and surrounding the grinder, different grinders will hold some grinds, okay? Even though I just adjusted that, most of these grinds are probably still at the same size as what we had before, okay? So that needs to be purged. Just basically run some grinds after you change the size. So what we'll do is we'll dump those out. I know it's a horrible waste, but we want to know that we actually have changed the size and that all of these new grinds match those changes. So we'll do that one more time. So that's what happens. You want to basically, purge it. You want to empty it out. So now we know that we've run 18 plus grinds out. So now that any grinds that come out from this point forward will actually reflect our changes. All right, 18.0. All right, so now I can actually see that this is more coarse than before. 18 grams, that's the recommended dosage for the double cup. All right, so if you have the same amount of grinds, then 18 grams will be more volume, more size for the same amount of weight. So without having your grinder dialed in, with it being a little too coarse, 18 grams will overflow. And give it a tamp. All right. We're going to aim for 20 to 30 seconds at a 1-to-2 ratio, so 36 grams output. And see what we get. The first few seconds, the machine is pre-infusing. It's basically just adding a little bit of water. All right, so with this being too coarse, it's coming out really fast. It's a very thick stream. We're already well past that 36 grams. We're at 50, 60 grams. That's 66 grams in probably less than 20 seconds. It happened so fast. So with that, we have well over the volume that we wanted and really quick. This is watery. This is called under-extracted. It basically, we extracted the coffee way too fast or didn't extract it for long enough. I'll show you what the coffee puck actually looks like there. Okay, so I've seen worse, but it's a bit wet, so I'm letting it drain. So here, those grinds are a little too big, and it's not immediate, but actually I just felt that the puck rised a little bit. Okay, so it's a little squishy, a little spongy, and it kind of feels, it almost feels like it didn't really saturate. I'll give you one more look at that. They actually look dry, but in a bad way. This basically means that it didn't have enough time to really saturate that water into your grinds. Let's do it again, but this time we're gonna adjust it to much more fine. So we're gonna bring this below the 1. So bring it close, almost to the minimum. Okay. Now again, we need to purge the machine so that we can actually get that size ground. So a lot of these grinds right now, we're actually still in the machine, in the grinder, and in the chute itself. So that is purging. Last bit was actually much more fine than the first grinds that were coming out. Okay, so now we'll have a much more fine grind, and we expect it to be too fine. Now with it being too fine, still at 18 grams, that's going to basically not give enough space in between those individual grinds for the water to get through. So basically they're going to fit together so well that there's going to be nowhere for the water to soak through the puck. And we'll give you an example of what that looks like when that happens. And something to notice is the finer your grinds, the longer it takes the machine to grind it, of course. You know, naturally it's got to do a lot more work to get the same amount of weight or mass for that smaller grind. All right, 18.0, 18.1, it's bouncing between the two. Since it's so fine, I'm actually going to homogenize them a little bit because they're clumping. So this will just kind of help break up those clumps. Let's go ahead and drop that into our basket. Give it a gentle distribution for you, just to kind of even it out, without pressure though. Trying not to push them down too much, just level them. I don't know if you can see it, but these are so fine that it'll actually fit in between the bits of my fingerprints. So this is incredibly fine grind, too fine. But we'll treat it as it's right so that we can see just how much just the grind size affects the brew. I'm gonna go ahead and tamp that down, and then we'll pull the shot. So now that it's been tamped, you can see that there's actually quite a bit of space from the surface of the basket and the surface of the coffee grinds. There's a lot of space there. There's a little too much. Just want you to have that visual expectation that that's kind of too much space there. Get a fresh cup. Zero it out. Again, we're looking for 36 grams out in 20 to 30 seconds. This should be a little too tight though. It'll likely be really thick, really muddy and dark, like used motor oil. It'll barely trickle. And the machine might even just reject it. It might just say it's too much pressure, something's wrong, and it'll give us an error message sometimes. So far, it's been more than 10 seconds and I haven't even seen my first drops. So this is too thick. It's too much pressure for the machine. What that'll do is create an over-extracted shot. It's going to spend too much time in contact with the hot water. It's overcooking your food. It's like burning your food, okay? So the first one was like raw food. This one's going to be like burnt food. Neither of them you really want, you know? So in this case, we're at 35 seconds and 0 grams output. Not a drop in the cup yet. And finally, at 40 seconds, we're getting a few drops. And they're thick, they're slow moving, very, very viscous. At that point, we're going to have an incredibly bitter tasting drink. It's pure carbon at this point. I won't even waste your day waiting on that to reach the output. And we're finally only up to 6 grams, a third of the weight that we put in. We've almost reached the maximum capacity of water, the 65 milliliters that we told the machine to max out at, which can be adjusted, but obviously that's way too much. So after all that time, all of that energy and water, for the same amount of coffee, this is all we've got. And it's very thick. It's very, very dark. It smells burnt. I honestly dare not even taste it. It'll taste incredibly bitter and burnt. It'll just be like pure burnt carbon, like charcoal. See what that puck looks like. So it had some water sitting on top. It's soaking in now, but something else that'll happen when it's too fine like this is there'll be so much pressure that if the water eventually finds a way to get through, it'll create a hole and find the path of least resistance. And I don't see that happened here, but it does happen sometimes. But here it's very muddy. It's a little too spongy. And that filter, that puck's actually trying to rock its way out from the side. This is it's going to stick in there. It's just not right. And it may be hard to demonstrate for you, but if we look here, the surface here is very dark black versus our other shots are more of this color all the way around. So that's where you can actually see that this point here, the bottom of the puck is burnt. That's where you're getting that bitter flavor from as well. So overall, just not a good experience. You don't want to drink that, honestly. And finally, this next part we're going to do is we're going to dial it in. Again, purge after we make our changes, try again, and using that recommended 18 grams in, 36 out within 20 to 30 seconds. Once we find that after purging, that is how we'll know that we've dialed in to the proper grind size. And we can give it a try here. So here we're going to try maybe a 2. So just a little bit to the right, a little bit more coarse than the number 1 setting. And in the past, recently, that was about the right coarseness, right granularity, right grind size for these beans with their freshness and just their roast level and, you know, everything else. So adjusted that, we're going to purge it now. Basically, we're going to get any of those retained grinds, that old grind size out. And I know it hurts that this is wasteful, and hopefully you can make another use of this. But, you know, again, we want to actually have a consistency. You know, we want all the grinds relatively the same size. You know, we want to know that we made our change and that our change is reflected. It's better to waste it now than to have to dial it in 5 more times, right? So we've purged it, we've made our change and then purged it. Let's go ahead and do it one more final time. Look at that, 18.0 on the dot. Beautiful. I'll distribute it a little bit first. So here, we can't really see the individual grinds without getting too close, even with great vision. But we can also see that it's not too chunky, it's not too clumpy, it's not sticking to itself. So at the right coarseness, at 18 grams, without tamping it down, without adding pressure, it's almost level with it. So that's pretty good. After I tamp this out, I expect that it'll be a 1/4 inch of space from the surface. Not too much, but also not too close to the edge of our basket. Let's tamp. So hopefully this comes out at the right time. Maybe we got lucky, maybe we didn't. And if we didn't get it in the right grind size this time, you've at least witnessed what it's like to dial in and the steps that you take. Again, the whole purpose in this is to control the amount of pressure, to control the amount of time that it's actually brewing or extracting. Let's go ahead and hit it. We put in 18 grams. We're expecting 36 grams out from 20 to 30 seconds. And that number, the time, can really vary based on, you know, what tastes good with that bean and your own personal preference. You know, everyone's palate is a little different, and there's no exact, you know, these are all guidelines still, you know, starting points. We're at 30 grams at almost 20 seconds. There's 20 seconds, and we just hit over 38 grams, and I didn't stop it quick enough. But here, this is still a lot closer. That's actually really close. I should have stopped it right at the 36 grams. Now these numbers change, but let me show you what that good shot looks like. You see the crema? It's not too thin, not too thick. Got a nice blonde and honey colors to it. Light browns. And then the shot itself, the espresso itself, should be dark, but not pitch black. And it shouldn't be watery or see-through, but it also, you know, shouldn't look like used motor oil. And with this, within that time frame, this shot will have usually a little bit of sourness to it, but maybe not overwhelming to where it like is uncomfortable in the jaw, but also not a little bit of bitterness, but not super bitter. And it shouldn't leave like a really strong film of like incredible bitterness on the back of your throat either. So yeah, again, just a quick summarization. We recommend starting at 1 gram. Every time you change your size, you'll need to purge out some because all grinders will retain some grinds in between changing. And again, you know, you want it more coarse, you know, bigger pieces if it's coming out too slow or not at all. And you want to go more fine or smaller pieces if it's coming out too fast. You know, if it's just pouring right out in a few seconds, you need to make those pieces smaller so they fit together a little better. The smaller the pieces, the more surface area for the coffee. The more coarse, the less surface area. The less surface area for that water to make contact with. And again, remember, purge in between, change your grind. You'll need to change your grind size, and you'll need to dial in, is what we call this, whenever you change your beans. You know, maybe you've got a new bag of beans, you want to try them. Some are more darkly roasted, some are lighter roasted. These are all things that you'll want to do, but this is kind of the biggest variable that you're going to mess with when you're trying to perfect your flavor of your shots. Thanks for watching.